Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this evening. My name's David Ward. I'm one of the committee members on the Lancaster West Residents Association. Just to do a bit of housekeeping, this evening's presentation is in webinar style, so everybody's on mute at the moment. If you would like to ask a question during the session, you can either use the Q&A box on your screen, so you can type your questions there. Or if you would like to ask your question directly to James, you can use the raise hand function, and then I'll be able to bring you into the conversation. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded, so that residents that are not able to attend today will be able to view it at a later stage. I'll hand over to the chair of the RA, Abbas, to give a brief introduction, and then he will pass it over to James, who will go through the agenda, go through his updates, and then after he's given his updates, we will go through and do the Q&A part of the session. So Abbas, over to you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first of many Zoom meetings that hopefully we're going to have. This one is for James, obviously, and hopefully if this one goes well, we're going to hold many more of these, and probably we can have our general meetings this way during these very strange times. And we are hoping that we can make our estate a better place by having regular meetings with officials, including James, or council leaders, and between ourselves as the residents. I give the stage to James Caspell now.
Thank you, Abbas, and thank you, David, and thank you to the Lancaster West Residents Association, firstly for the opportunity to talk to residents tonight. I recognise some of the names in the participants list, but I can see there's some new faces or new names as far as I'm concerned, which is great to see people taking an interest in what's going on the estate, and I'm really looking forward to answering as many of your questions as time allows. I'd also just like to take the opportunity to thank the Lancaster West Residents Association for their support, firstly for the community, and secondly to us as a neighbourhood team through what has been beyond strange, I think, extremely difficult times, but there's a number of really positive achievements that we've been able to deliver working in partnership with the Residents Association and residents as a whole. And I just want to give a bit of an update in terms of where we are on three particular issues and the progress we've made certainly in the last few months. And that's firstly to talk about the refurbishment. Secondly, I'll talk a little bit about securing additional funding and funding opportunities that we've been exploring as a neighbourhood team in partnership with the RA. And thirdly, I know a number of residents are really concerned about the spike in antisocial behaviour and criminality, that is what it is, that has emerged in certain pockets of the estate. I'll try to keep my comments as short as possible, mainly to give as many of you as would like to ask me any question about anything at all, and I know David has some questions that have been sent in as well. So in terms of the refurbishment, it's been oddly, given what we've gone through as a society, quite a productive last few months. So we managed to finish off our engagement programme in terms of our top 10s and prioritisation workshops, which were about working with different blocks to establish what the priorities were in particular blocks and part of the estate. We then moved into, in spring, commencing our procurement, and 40 residents kindly volunteered a significant amount of their time to help us to assess who would be the most appropriate design teams for the different bits of the estate to design and deliver a 21st century model estate. I'm pleased to say that for every block other than Treadgold House and Campbell Mews, and I'll come back to that in a moment, we are now in contract with 3 really exciting, innovative design teams. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that they're going to start engaging with residents over the months ahead. And they'll be here as well. They won't just design things and leave us. They will design and oversee and project manage the delivery of those designs. And those designs will, of course, be co-designed with yourselves every step of the way. So in terms of Treadgold House and Campbell Mews, we have found a way where we'll be able to make an appointment which is in line with the feedback that the residents who helped us score for those particular blocks, and some of the opportunities that have just emerged, particularly for Treadgold House, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. So we should have design teams good to go in the next few weeks. So we won't be too far behind, and we have actually been doing quite a bit of work for those two blocks if there's any residents from Treadgold and Campbell. So although we didn't make the appointment at the same time for those blocks, it isn't a case that they've been left behind. So we've got design teams who are also looking at the heating and hot water solutions that will be appropriate for the estate, looking at CCTV and door entry and digital TV. Some of you will already have seen Hyper Optic are already installing the fibre optic broadband across the estate. So works have been able to continue despite what's been a shutdown for most of the country. We've managed to keep Lancaster West open to work in a COVID secure way and make sure that we deliver the improvements that we have promised all of you. The other bit of work that we've been doing on the refurbishment has been on the internal refurbishment programme, and with the internal refurbishment programme we have commenced that programme with Moorland House effectively as our pilot block. So why Moorland House? Moorland House happens to have some of the oldest kitchens and bathrooms on the estate. It has a kitchen and a bathroom that's 46 years old. The average age of the kitchens and bathrooms in Moorland is also amongst some of the oldest. It's also a block of the right size, depending on the amount of properties we're at this stage ready to engage with and start to plan the refurbishment. And I just want to reassure any residents of Moorland House who weren't at the Moorland House launch and haven't managed to hear anything yet, this won't be a typical way that a council offers a kitchens and bathrooms programme, which you might have experienced in the past, whereby ultimately you let us in within 3 months or you miss out. Not at all. What we will do is tailor every conversation, every programme of works based on the individual needs of each household and the preferences. And so we will blend those preferences and those asks with what we identify through our property condition surveys, and we've had about half a dozen of those have already taken place, that we identify as a landlord we may need to do certain works, and that's primarily to improve the health and safety of the immediate household, and in many cases the wider block as well. So with Moorland House, that's kicked off. We look to commence works in our first property in Moorland House this side of the new year, which, given everything that's going on, I think is a major success. We've engaged with a procurement exercise to pick internal refurbishment contractors, and I think with the way the refurbishment is unfolding, we can think of it as two main streams of work. The main block refurbishment, in terms of the design and delivery of your windows, insulation, new roofs, CCTV, heating and hot water, and then the internal refurbishment programme, which many of you will have seen. Hundreds of people have come to our open house sessions, and some of you may even be already benefiting from. 11% of all tenanted homes have already received full refurbishment across the estate, largely our empty properties, which have all been relet through the local lettings plan. 37 households have moved through the local lettings plan that we co-designed with the Residents Association. And what we're really keen to do is make sure that as many people as possible who are resident at the time of the Grenfell tragedy could benefit from that fantastic quality of home that you have helped us to design. So with Moorland House, we have there, as I say, the internal refurbishment, and then in the spring we will start to programme and start the internal refurbishment programme for other blocks as well. We have a rough idea of what that will look like, but as I say, with Moorland House, we've got a new team. This is a very new programme in unique circumstances, and crucially, we want to do it in a way where after the refurbishment, you tell us it was worth the disruption, it was worth the effort, it was worth spending time engaging with us. The easy thing to do would be to deliver a programme, turn up when we like, create noise when we like, and tick a box. That's not what we're here to do. I've been very clear with the team and with our contractors. This is about responding and working with you. So if, for example, for obvious reasons, given we're in the middle of a pandemic, a household tells us, actually, at the moment, I don't really want random people coming into my house and refurbishing it. Can you come back, you know, fingers crossed, other side of a vaccine, or when the pandemic is otherwise waned? We will absolutely do that. We're not going anywhere as a team, and we will be here for as long as it takes. So everybody who has a wish to benefit from the internal refurbishment has been able to do so moving forwards. The second area I just want to talk about is in terms of what the design phase looks like. So we have done a significant amount of engagement already, which in usual circumstances wouldn't have already taken place. That's meant that we've been able to capture your top 10s. Below that, capture the ideas days. I think we've got some questions later about those and how much of that is going to be delivered. Our design teams have now started, and the one thing which we have mutually identified is the lack of robust asset data, maps and surveys and so on. So we're currently undertaking a range of different surveys, whether it's thermal imaging, whether it's simple plans and line drawings, topographical, looking at the earth, looking at the structure of buildings. We're also going to be commencing drone surveys at one point as well, which is a lot cheaper, a lot quicker, and actually a lot more reliable than relying on people to go up on scaffold and taking pictures from an angle. So we're at the moment spending a significant amount of time undertaking a range of surveys in which we can then design to a greater level of detail than we have been so far the options that will then start to present to you. The thing I'll say with the design stage, it will take as long as it needs to get to designs that block by block residents, in the majority at least, are happy with those designs. It won't be the case that we will just say, here's the windows you're having, or this is the installation you must have. Not at all. Ultimately, you as residents have a veto, a final say, and we'll be holding a block reps meeting. You can see we've got some block reps in the room. Probably, I think we're looking at the 3rd of December. I believe that's a Thursday. We'll be holding a block reps meeting where we'll be introducing the design teams to our block reps primarily. We may also, we'll have a discussion with the RA committee. We might actually open that up and invite the whole estate in. One of the good things about meetings like this is you can do that quite quickly. So that design stage will commence firstly in terms of once we've got all of that data, all that survey information, and we combine that with what residents have already told us they want us to prioritise. The design teams will then engage with you, get from your mouths, if you like, exactly verbatim what it is you would like them to consider. So we'll talk about ASB a little bit later on. One of the clear things we want them to address in certain blocks on the estate is what we call designing out ASB. Creating blanket CCTV in common areas, restricting the way that people can come through the estate already at the moment, even though they don't live here. We've had some recent incidents in the last week, which I know have angered and upset residents, as they have us as a neighbourhood team. And so I really want people to feel that the refurbishment is not a process that has just commenced and will be done to you. It will be done with you, and at every step of the way, we will check back again and again until we're in a place where people are overwhelmingly happy with the proposals, just like we've done with the internal refurbishment standard. So once we've got those designs and we've introduced the design teams with residents, we'll talk about different ways to engage on specifics like windows again, heating and hot water, and the aesthetics of buildings and so on. And then they'll come back with some final designs. And once we've agreed those, we'll be looking to procure the contractors who are actually going to deliver the works, supervised by the design team still and ourselves as the neighbourhood team. So we've got quite a lot of new faces that have started. We've got 3 refurbishment project managers that the RA committee kindly sat on a significant amount of interviews. So we've got a range of experiences and talents that have joined the team. And we're really looking forward to meeting you again in person as we start to move back into a more of a detailed engagement phase and talking with you to agree the best way forward in terms of the delivery of that refurbishment. The timescales of the refurbishment, we're still looking at 2 to 4 years, depending on the block and the amount of works. And I'll talk a bit in a moment about why some of them may be as as soon as 2 years. But ultimately, again, the last thing we want to do is rush this. But I'm very keen to go as fast as we can, but as slow as we have to give you the assurance that we're doing things in the right way, that we're addressing concerns around noise and respite, and if people are without a kitchen for a week or two, and so on. So the second thing I want to talk about, which links in with the refurb, is funding opportunities. So we have been working really hard with the RA committee to seek additional funding. At the moment, we have slightly more than £57.9 million. And that's because we've been successful in a number of grant bids. So Camford Court, we've secured £106,000 to go towards improving its roof. And one of the conditions of that, and this is from the government's Green Homes grant, is that that work needs to be undertaken by next September. So we're currently working on quotes for that in terms of options, and then we'll engage with the residents of Camford Court about that. We also have the estate improvement budget that we've secured, which is an additional 180,000. We've secured £246,000 from central government to look at a renewable district heating system. So at the moment, 80% of you will know you're reliant on two very unreliable district heating systems, which are gas-fired. We're looking to create the boroughs, and in fact this part of London's first renewable heat network. There are potentially government grants and subsidies that we're exploring, and what that will do is combine a mixture of air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, potentially even a sewer source heat pump. Just under Lancaster Green there's a relatively large sewer, and we're currently undertaking a survey to monitor how much heat we can extract from that sewage, which we can then use to warm up the heating and hot water requirements of a district heat network. Ultimately, though, if we still need to rely on gas, we will do so, but obviously gas being a fossil fuel is dirty. It is something which over the next decade at least the price of gas will increase significantly. So in line with that commitment to both be a 21st century model estate, but also in January the council committed for Lancaster West to be carbon neutral by 2030. We're really keen to explore ways to do that and funding that will enable that. Last Thursday, the team submitted 3 bids to the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund Demonstrator Project. There's a national fund of £50 million, and we've bid for some of that to really unlock the potential here at Lancaster West. We've engaged with our residents, we've engaged with our leaseholders, we've got some top-notch design teams already on the pitch. We're what they call shovel ready, in that we're ready to go. Residents are constantly day in, day out saying, when are we going to start the works, James? So we feel we're in a really strong place to deliver something which the rest of the country can potentially look at and learn from. And there's been some spectacular work that's gone on in the last few months with residents and amongst the team in terms of sustainability. We're looking at introducing new recycling and food waste facilities on this side of the estate during lockdown. Robert has done a fantastic job in creating the Lancaster West Tea Garden, which for those who've not been before, please do pop round anytime between 10 and 4 every day and help yourselves to the herbs and vegetables that have been grown in there with fresh soil, I should add. So there's lots of good work that's going on in terms of the green agenda. And in terms of funding, last night we held a good event with the residents of Treadgold House. I don't know if there's any residents from Treadgold today who weren't able to be there yesterday. We'll be sharing that link on our app, We Are W11. And we've also got a WhatsApp group as well. And I think there's a drop-in that will take place next Wednesday. And that's potentially to see whether the residents of Treadgold House would like us to say yes to an exclusive offer that we've negotiated with the European Union for a potential £1.3 million worth of additional funding. Now that additional funding is there to essentially create a model carbon neutral, what they call retrofit. So retrofit basically means doing works to an existing building compared to, say, new build, where for obvious reasons it's a lot easier to build really green blocks and homes when you're starting from scratch. But when you consider 80% of the homes we're all going to be living in 2050 already exist, the society as a whole and the economy and the governments need to find a way to be able to retrofit to existing homes, and that involves things like off-site construction of windows, of insulation, in a way where it minimises disruption to residents and delivers a significant improvement to their quality of life. If residents tread gold and it's entirely their decision, we're going to engage as much as possible with all residents, and we want a majority of residents to give us a view, and we would only go ahead if a majority of those residents actually wanted us to go ahead. And if they do, that will mean that over the next 2 years, a lot of work will take place in Tread Gold. It'd be an additional £35,000 per home to really turn it into something pretty spectacular, I must say. We'd be looking at photovoltaic cells on the roof, solar panels to generate electricity, air source heat pumps, removal of gas, which improves safety and carbon emissions and will mean that we've got a more sustainable and cleaner environment, both here on the estate and globally. We'll be contributing towards that. And it would also bring added benefits such as larger balconies, as well as all the offerings of our internal refurbishment in terms of the kitchens and bathrooms programme. So we continue to look at additional sources of funding, and we work with the RA to coach and mentor our residents as well to be able to bid for things in the community. So there's a lot of live bids at the moment, which residents have asked us for advice for in terms of how to put together project plans. And a number of them have started to come through successfully. I won't name names, but we're starting to see some really fantastic grant bids that are being awarded, which will help us to do the works we don't currently have the funding for, so particularly green spaces, gardens, as I mentioned, and so on. The last thing I just want to mention in terms of antisocial behaviour. So we take really seriously the spike that we've seen. As some of you will know, we've had guards, our overnight wardens, have been recruited to patrol the estate sporadically over a number of weeks, particularly before the schools went back. We've agreed that our RBKC community wardens now have a base here at Baseline, and they work and patrol the area up to 9 o'clock. However, it's quite clear to me, certainly in light of events in the last few days and weeks, that that isn't enough. And therefore, we're meeting with the police on Monday to address what we see as a number of people who don't live on the estate starting to try and essentially take it over as their turf and do whatever they feel like doing in a way that is, in my view, quite disrespectful and outright criminal in many ways on an estate where we have enough things to be focusing on. So we'll be meeting with the police on Monday. We're then going to hold an event on the 24th of November of this month with the police in attendance, with a number of residents who have shown an interest in this, and also the lead member, Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith, who's also the Deputy Leader of the Council, will be in attendance. So I want people to know firstly that we take this really seriously. We're looking at a range of issues in terms of how do we improve or increase the number of patrols that the police are able to afford to make in the area. How do we give residents confidence to report crime anonymously? Because ultimately I don't have powers of arrest, and we will do as much as we can to design out and address and check CCTV and liaise that information onto the police. But ultimately we will need residents to feel confident, whether that's through third-party reporting or other means, to report criminality as and when they see it, and to build confidence that the police are going to respond. So in terms of those meetings, hopefully from that a number of concrete actions will be announced. We continue to work with the design teams to look at issues such as, can we create a gating off essentially of the estate, and that's mainly to give peace of mind and peace bluntly to residents who live in our blocks. A number of the other measures that we'll deliver through the refurbishment in terms of improved windows, so on, will obviously diminish noise nuisance and the concerns that are raised from that point of view. But ultimately, we need to create an environment where our estate is no longer seen as a soft touch for people to come and behave in an antisocial way. So I'll stop there, and I think I'll hand back to David, who I would imagine will lead the question and answers.
Thank you very much, James. Yes, we do have quite a few questions for you. So there were some questions that were submitted during registration. So I'll just go through those with you. First question, I think you've already tackled this one regarding the refurbishment. How long will all these works take? And will we be able to run our estate ourselves in the future?
Great. Yeah, so the first one, so I think in totality, and I think the one thing I've learned here is that to do things properly does take a significantly longer period of time than certainly those of us who've worked in housing before and the building industry would have experienced. I would say that actually a lot of the things we've done are a lot better for it in terms of quality. So it goes back to my point around we'll go as quick as we can, but as slow as we need to. I think given the level of ambition here, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we're finishing things up in 5 years' time. And in fact, in 5 years' time, we might be looking at issues like developing the garages under Hurstway and Testerton. You know, they might finally be delivered. There's some grant funding we've submitted recently to the Cabinet Office and LGA to look at that. But ultimately, we'll do that with residents and with agreement of residents. So I'm really keen to certainly start works next year in terms of some of the major elements. So in terms of windows, for example, for those buildings that are crying out for new windows, in terms of heating and hot water solutions, and certainly piloting a range of other things which the design teams have started to suggest. So we may have a way where we can deliver significant improvements in the thermal comfort of the three walkways without the need for extensive external wall insulation, which, given the sensitivities in the context here, I think would be welcomed by residents. So I certainly hope to see, you know, a start of some comprehensive building works next year. But as I say, I would not be surprised if we're talking a number of years to deliver things to the level of ambition that residents have rightly asked of us. And also some of the funding means that does increase the scope, that does increase the complexity. We are next to Grenfell Tower in terms of a structure where the future is yet to be decided. There's a lot of activity in this area. Grenfell Nursery, subject to planning and resident consultation, if that goes ahead, that will be some extensive building works which will go on next year as well. So we're balancing a number of different things, and the extensiveness that we would like to deliver to the refurbishment programme may mean that it does take a lot longer than 2 or 3 years, but we will only do that if and when residents support us to do so. So I don't want people feeling that this is just going to go on forever and they're not in control. And there's a range of things around like the refurbishment decant scheme, which we've now rolled out so people can move to new blocks or be refurbished if they prefer, rather than a disruption of living in situ. On the second question, so there is a statutory right of any resident in a social housing estate or a leasehold environment to potentially manage their own estate. There are different governance structures for that. Whether there is a TMO or an EMB, which this estate has already experienced and been managed by historically, and whether it's a community land trust. I know there's 1 or 2 residents who are quite passionate about community land trusts, or whether it's through some form of cooperative. I think it might be appropriate to hand over to perhaps Abbas and the vice chair to give their view rather than my own. But yes, you can theoretically manage your own estate. I must say, in terms of the feedback I'm getting, and certainly as we together start to deliver benefits, so as we start to know people who've moved through the local lettings plan, as we start to see that actually we haven't just done 6 show homes and forgotten about the rest. So I think as people start to see progress, I'm certainly finding that as a local neighbourhood team, a lot more people are happy and supportive for us to carry on doing the work we're doing as part of the council, essentially. You've got that accountability and responsibility politically. I think we've got some fantastic ward councillors and lead members who show endorsement and support of the work we're doing here. So I certainly don't sense a mood that's widespread personally, although it is your right, of course, to explore it, for people to look at self-management. I wonder, Chair, if the RA might like to comment on that particular question.
Yes, please. David.
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's just to say on the question of community land trust. At the moment, the RA's view is that it's not the right time to do a community land trust, simply because we are in the middle of all this building work. We're in the middle of all this investment that's coming from the government, and though a community land trust might be a really good model for the estate in the future, it would put a lot of that in jeopardy, and it would also mean we may potentially be on the hook for any expenses incurred when the tower is demolished. So not now, but maybe in a few years' time, it will be something we could explore again. If 65% of the residents were to say they wanted a community land trust, then of course we would do what our residents wanted.
And I think RBKC would have loved to get rid of us at this time, and not having any responsibility or commitment towards our estate, while we can hold them really accountable for time being, and while we have the tower here, we need to make most of it for benefit of everybody. Over to you, James. Yeah, thank you.
So the next question for James is, I was wondering what were the planned next steps in regards to the redevelopment of the walkways following the Book of Ideas made in 2018. Specifically, I'm referring to the planned structural changes such as ceilings, refuge space, car park / basement, lifts, exterior, etc.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so a number of you would have come on the trip we made to King's Crescent Estate in Hackney. I think it was all the way back in January 2019. King's Crescent Estate, huge development there. I think it's 180 million in total. Lots of new build, lots of retrofit. And in the procurement process for the design teams, Karakuzovich Carson Architects were selected jointly by the council and residents for what we call Lot 1, which was the 3 covered walkways. They actually designed King's Crescent as well, and I think the similarities there, for those that know King's Crescent, are quite clear in terms of some of the stuff in the tail end of that question around new build, turning the garages into new homes and so on. So I go back to those timelines. So we will hold our first engagement event on the 3rd of December to introduce the design teams. We will then probably be in a position, certainly in the new year, to start holding a bit more of an engagement process around what is technically feasible. So the ideas books, were fantastic. Some of the most impressive ideas generation products I've seen in my career. But they weren't tempered from a funding point of view, and they weren't equally tempered from the point of view of what is technically feasible in terms of structures, disruption, and all the rest of it. So I think in terms of some of the suggestions, certainly in terms of what we would do with the main configuration of the walkways, that's going to be well beyond the budget that we will ever have, to be quite frank about it. However, some of the early suggestions that have emerged, and the potential to secure some additional funding from a carbon neutrality point of view, in terms of the level of works around fire safety, and trying to get things that do more than one thing. So if, for example, we're looking at something like the atria, which will need replacing, that are covering the walkways at the moment, if we can do something which this absolutely addresses the need to allow smoke to escape and for the AOVs to not fail, if they can also help to capture heat or to improve ventilation to prevent overheating in the summer. So we're really looking at creative ways for different building elements to do more than one thing. And similarly, in terms of the future of the fire curtains, which we had to put in on the instruction of the London Fire Brigade, we're looking to design a more holistic fire strategy rather than a reactive one, which after the tragedy was totally understandable in terms of why people were very much looking to almost impose as many different fire safety provisions as possible. What we're really keen to do is find alternatives to more of those fire curtains, because there are still some windows that are not covered by those curtains, and that could be a form of triple glazed fire safe glass, for example. And Abbas joined us and a number of other residents to Wilmcote House in Portsmouth in January. I talked a bit about this last night at the Treadgold event, where they've got a very similar issue around kitchens facing an internal corridor, and that's the way that they dealt with it. A lot better aesthetically than the fire curtains, very safe, reduces noise. We get lots of noise complaints as well in terms of people playing in the covered walkways. And I think so. What we'll start to be able to do, certainly in the early new year, is come back with some designs and speak to residents about what it is that you would like to see. And as I say, we'll take as long as we need to get to a point where we know, based on what funding we've got available at that point and what residents tell us, we get designs that people are really excited about to take forwards. In terms of the lift feasibility, we have Chapman's, who are a lift specialist. They do lifts all over the world, including some of the tallest buildings in the world in Dubai. They're doing a lift analysis at the moment for us to work out the feasibility of installing lifts in the walkways. Now, I will say that a lift typically costs about £100,000 a pop. A new lift, given the configuration of the walkways and all the sort of enabling works to it, wouldn't surprise me if it's a little bit more than that. That's a significant amount of funding. But we'll do the feasibility. We'll crunch the numbers, and we'll come back to you. And ultimately, if residents feel overwhelmingly this is something they would like us to do, then we can explore it. However, taking us back to the top 10, so I'm looking at them here, lifts actually came out as number 10, so relatively low down the list. And when I look at some of the other things like windows, heating and hot water, which are also expensive items, it probably makes sense for us to look at focusing on what we do there.
Thank you, James. Next question is a two-parter. Question one is, previously you mentioned that the estate cleaning contract was due for renewal in April this year. Has this been renewed? And the second question is, having raised the issue of motorised scooters using St Mark's Close as a shortcut between Clarendon Road and Lancaster Road, I have not received a response. I'm concerned that this can lead to an accident involving pedestrians and suggest that measures are taken to block/prevent the access.
Thanks, David. So on the first one, so the cleaning contract is a borough-wide one. I think it's, so the consultation commenced in April. I think the contract is up in the spring. Funnily enough, I'm meeting our new head of cleaning and caretaking external services, Dennis Paul, tomorrow to talk about the future and what that might look like. What residents have expressed to me is they would like, in the same way as we have our own repairs team brought back in-house from Repairs Direct, they would like to see certainly an in-house team, and whether that's borough-wide with us having some degree of local ability to manage, or it's a dedicated sort of self-isolated team, is to be decided. But there is a live consultation, which is a borough-wide consultation. But in my meeting with Dennis tomorrow, I will be expressing that it's been the strong view of residents who've spoken to me that would give us a lot more control to do what residents ask us to in a much quicker way. And personally as well, I think that there would be a lot of benefit about having an in-house team, but we need to just consider where we are and the affordability of that over the longer term. So by all means, please do continue to express your views to the RA and to me about what you would like to see as the future of the cleaning and caretaking service. To give an example, it might be that we see, I don't know, some broken glass and we want to ask a caretaker to sweep it up. Rather than me being able to just pop my head out the door and ask them to do that, I have to go through a supervisor, often pay a variation fee, the minimum of which is £50. It all starts to build up. So often services historically, particularly in Britain, have been outsourced on the proviso that it saved public money. In my professional experience, it's actually rarely the case, or certainly rarely the case without there being a diminishment, not just in terms of conditions for employees, which is a separate argument, but a valid one, but in terms of our primary concern, in terms of the quality of services to residents. So in the same way, around 85–90% of our repairs are now done in-house, and our satisfaction is significantly higher than it was when I first arrived, certainly. I personally see there's opportunities there in terms of cleaning and caretaking. In terms of the moped, so there's a range of things we're looking at in terms of quotes for chicanes to be installed around Lower Clarendon. Not sure where this particular resident lives, and I'm sorry you haven't had a inquiry responded to. If I could have those details, I will loop back and get the neighbourhood manager to make contact, because we should be getting back to all of our residents. Apologies for that, firstly. But we're well aware, and obviously in the pandemic, we've all seen the proliferation of electric scooters. irrespective of whether we think they should be legal or illegal, there is a danger there of zipping through pedestrianised areas, and that is definitely something that's on our radar to try and tackle as soon as possible.
Thank you, James. Next one is regarding the diesel leaf blowers. Is there any way we can get him a quieter machine or rake for the grassy areas? I'm studying for a master's, which is online due to COVID. I cannot speak or hear properly with the leaf blower. I have classes on Wednesday and Thursday. I would be delighted if the leaves by Barrington could be managed on a different day.
So 3 things there. Firstly, we've secured a couple of empty offices, a baseline with free Wi-Fi, free refreshments if people want them. So if for any reason there's some noise going on, so in this case, if the leaf blower, if it was works or so on, we can offer that to any resident free of charge. You can just pop in and we'll sort that out for you. So that's one thing I would mention. Secondly, if the leaf blowers, and I have had experience of this myself, of exactly this problem, sitting exactly where I'm sitting now with a diesel leaf blower blowing a couple of leaves along the pavement. So I hear that literally and figuratively in terms of the issue being raised. So if there is a particular issue with a particular block, please do email us directly and then we can feed that back through the supervisor. More positively, we have incidentally just started trialling electric leaf blowers, which are firstly much quieter in terms of the nub of the question, but secondly, a lot cleaner, and thirdly, a lot greener as well in terms of obviously not burning diesel willy-nilly around the estate. So this is something we're looking at, and in my meeting tomorrow with Dennis, I'll be talking about rolling out electric leaf blowers across the piece, but at the same time, only using them when we really need to. In many cases, you know, a quick brush is all you need to clear some leaves to the side of a path. You know, unless you're removing the leaves, which in many cases the leaves are just blown around, it's almost a futile exercise to be using them. So I am very surprised at how widely used the leaf blowers are on this estate. I don't know if it's a borough-wide issue, but it is one that is on our agenda. So thank you for that.
Thank you, James. So they're all the questions I received during registration. We've got a resident who would like to talk. We've got Susan. Susan, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, no, I didn't have a question actually, but
no worries. You had your hand up. That's fine.
No, I mean, I'm just listening. Obviously, some of James's answers of, you know, relating to some of the queries I had. So, I think, did you say that these architects were coming around in the new year, early in the new year?
So Susan, hello, good evening firstly. So as one of our block reps, we'll be inviting you to a meeting on the 3rd of December, where you'll be able to meet ECD, Eco-Conscious Design, who are your chosen architects. I will also say they're working currently on 50 Verity Close, which will be this borough's first low energy show home. And we have learned a significant amount from the work to that property, which will be applicable primarily to the Verity houses, but also to some extent to the Verity flats. So they've already been working with us. So in many ways, I think they'll be ahead of the curve when we start to do the engagement. But as I say, we want to make sure that we've got fire risk assessments that are to the highest grade possible, that we've got all the comprehensive surveys. So we've got a good baseline on which to propose the designs. The last thing we want to do is promise you something, and then in 6 months I'm saying, well, actually, that's not structurally possible. So I hear the keenness to get going and get engaging and so on. But there is a bit of a process we need to follow. But so hopefully you'll be able to make it and join us again on the 3rd of December and meet them. They've already been introduced to Moorland House. They're also going to be overseeing Talbot Grove House on the east side of the estate. But I'm sure they will be delighted to meet you, other block reps and residents, and work with you over the months and years ahead.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next, we've got Stuart. Go ahead, Stuart.
Hey James, how are you?
Yeah, good to see you. It's a Verity night tonight, isn't it?
It is. I wanted to get a quick update on the fire doors. We've had this conversation about a year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
But I'm still waiting. Obviously, people in Verity are still waiting for their fire doors. We keep getting the things that close the doors, the closers, reinstalled. We keep getting letters saying that we're not abiding by fire safety from the hub, but your fire services are not getting in touch with us, the residents. You know, it shouldn't be us chasing the company that's doing the fire doors. It should be them getting in contact with us, which has been an issue I've raised with the neighbourhood team.
Yeah. Thank you, Stuart. There's been many delays, largely this year due to the pandemic, in the way that the doors are made. They're made to measure to existing properties. So there's been a significant delay, I think, in terms of what I would call the low risk blocks in terms of their size and other provisions. What I will do, though, I've just made a note, you might have seen, I will follow up with the borough-wide project manager, who has excellently worked with us here to, the walkways now is 85% complete. Treadgold is also complete for Emily House, although not on the estate. We've managed to do all but one during the pandemic. So what I will do is ask for an updated programme, and I'll ask for that to be distributed to block reps, of which you're also one. And to update on where we are on that. I know you and I have discussed this before, and I'm sorry that this is taking longer, but we are committed to make sure that every single property has a really top-notch fire-resistant main front door, and they look a lot better as well. So the ones we're using now are a really good calibre, and I will come back to you.
All right, cheers, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Stuart. Next question we've got is, when is the refurbishment on kitchens and bathrooms commencing? Do we have an update on when this will start?
Yeah, so I've mentioned with Moreland House already. It's already started in terms of the surveys and the resident liaison side of things. We continue to do what I would call ad hoc pepper potted refurbishment. So when somebody says my kitchen's falling to bits, sometimes we go in and it's not, sometimes we go in and it is. I've never seen so many really, really old kitchens and bathrooms in my career than I have on this estate, and we've been working hard with quite a lot of in situ residents to repair or replace their new kitchens and bathrooms. But in terms of the main internal refurbishment programme, we'll review where we are early next year. We'll have probably 3 contractors and our in-house team who will be able to deliver and respond to whether it's whole blocks we would be giving them, or void properties, or working with residents who might be out during the day, so, lockdown restrictions permitting, or working with very vulnerable residents who are housebound. So depending on the situation, we'll decide what sort of contractor and what sort of support package we put around them. I think in the new year we'll be in a place, so certainly if we know where we are in terms of some of the additional funding, to start actually displaying a formal programme. So basically a block by block approach, if you like, of when we will start the engagement and then the works and so on. So like a bit of a waterfall, if you like, of refurbishment. 90% plus of all the refurbishment works inside homes we've done has been on Hurstway, Testerton and Barrington. Now that's largely to empty properties, so I'm not saying they would go further down the list, if you like, in terms of the programme because of that. What we will do is combine our stock condition data based on what residents have told us. I mean, nearly every single block has put kitchens and bathrooms in their top 2 or 3. In fact, I don't think any, I'm looking at them now, not a single block has put it below 4th in terms of kitchens and bathrooms. So it's quite clear that people really, really want the internal refurbishment. And so what we'll do, we'll scale up, and what we'll balance as well as what the data tells us and what residents have asked us is the noise impacts and the disruption. So what we want to do is phase things in such a way we have what we call quiet blocks. By that I mean there will be blocks where we're not doing any work. That's primarily to provide some respite and a break for people, so it's not 5 years of continuous work, but also for people who do need to temporarily move or permanently move, they can do so to blocks where for that moment in time, for a series of months, there isn't any significant work going on. So there's a number of different things that are at play, if you like. And the other thing I would just say is in terms of understanding the appetite for refurbishment. It's very early, we've only spoken to half a dozen people, but it's been quite interesting at Moorland House in terms of we've got some people who want basically what they see when they go to an open house, and we've got one person so far who wants virtually nothing. And most people are probably in the middle. So they might say, I like my kitchen, but I need a new bathroom. Or they might say the opposite. Or they might say, actually, I really like the internal doors. Can you do those, please? And then we'll marry that with what we as a landlord, if you like, survey and identify as needing to be done. And I think that what we'll end up with is a number of waves, if you like. So rather than saying we'll do Moorland House and I don't know, Talbot Walk and Treadgold, just to give some examples, we'll probably do a couple of waves. So we'll do that and then we'll come back again, because especially at the moment, people are going to say it's the middle of a pandemic. We've got people who are, still saying, especially with the stuff that's coming out from the public inquiry, are saying, I can't deal with this at the moment. People just for general life reasons, with the pandemic, it's going to bring economic turmoil. People are going to be out of work and all that sort of stuff. And I think what we'll probably be able to do, which is a positive, is not say to people, you must do it now or you've missed your chance. And I expect to see, as I say, a couple of waves of works. And we'll be in the spring in a position to maybe come up with a proposed programme which will work with the RA and block reps to sort of agree. What we won't do is start the whole estate together. What we won't say is we will finish everything at the same time. But we are trying to balance what we see as really acute needs, so where someone's kitchen or bathroom is falling to bits, with a more phased, programmatic way of working around. And again, I make no apologies for starting with a smaller block, not least because that's where the insight tells us there's the greatest need, but also because what would be the worst thing to do would be start with one of the larger blocks and end up getting to a stage where there's massive delays, or we're opening properties and we're not able to finish them. So we've really been working hard to get down the average turnaround of how long it takes to refurbish properties. Some of our longest have been, in terms of end to end, have been almost a year. Quite recently, we did 2 4-bedroom properties in less than 100 days for the very first time. And that's back to brick, refurbishing the whole piece, which very, very few residents will probably want or need, but they can ask for it and we will deliver it. But obviously that means a lot more disruption. So we are focusing on a number of ways to make the refurbishment as tailored as possible, as quick as possible, and not create an opportunity where people have to say yes on the spot, I want the refurbishment now. But obviously there's some economies of scale of doing block by block as opposed to that sort of piecemeal approach.
Thank you, James. Next, we've got Eunicia. She did write in a question, but she wants to speak, so I'll bring her in. Over to you, Eunicia. If you'd like to unmute.
You've got a better photo than me, Eunicia.
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good to hear from you.
Stop meeting like this. I don't know if you can hear me properly. Yeah. But James, I was just wondering if we could monitor. I know that we've got lots of unvoided flats now in Treadgold who we're moving in to the 1-bedrooms, because we're getting lots of vulnerable people moving in. It's not nice to call them vulnerable, but it's a specific type of resident. And some of us, or the questions have been put forward to me, it's even happened to me personally, where we've got a bit of a, I don't know what to call him, funny resident that is talking to children on the block that it's not acceptable. Right. So I'll write you a private email about this, but I think I know we're moving people in, but can we just be careful in sight of who we're moving in? And if we've got all kinds of the same people on the one strip, it's not really benefiting the block in any way before, because it's took us so long to get certain residents out, as you know, as you're aware when you first started working with us. And also if security could come over to Treadgold as well. I know they walk the walkways, but nobody comes into Treadgold, and we've had a few incidents in the night, and children are finding it hard to sleep to go to school the next day.
Okay, thank you, Eunicia. Good to see you again. We'll have a night off tomorrow, shall we? I think. Yeah. So first thing on the letter, yeah, I hear what you're getting at entirely, and I certainly, you know, sympathise, and I think that there's a number of things that we have to balance up. Obviously, we've got residents who, you know, may have certain conditions or vulnerabilities, if you like, and you know, they have a right to housing, but at the same time, what we don't want to do is disrupt, especially, you know, given what you've alluded to, you've been through in some of the flats, without being too specific of where we're talking about. So any unacceptable behaviour, just drop us an email and we can, you know, address that. Just because someone has a right to housing, something they can do what they like, and you know, there are conditions of a tenancy, and in some cases people are on introductory tenancies, and we will have that conversation with them. We are also, I think, as part of the refurbishment, looking to address, you know, sorts of issues that people bring up around noise, around being overlooked by different, less so in Treadgold, but in some of the blocks where people feel that they don't have privacy, or that people can peek in and see what's going on, and all that sort of thing. So these are the sorts of things we can look to alleviate from a design point of view. But I think the last bit around the security. So I've got the meeting I booked in with Ruth, and then we're meeting with the police as well on Monday. And absolutely, so Treadgold is one of our 2 gated blocks, and probably because it's gated, people assume there's no issues in there. And so what I will do is have a word. Well, I'll ask Ruth to have a word with the wardens, and when they're doing their rounds, just pop in, make themselves seen, you know, give a bit of assurance, sort of say hello to people who are around, sort of thing. And I think the RBKC wardens now, we've got them patrolling the estate, and they've got body cams now, so they can work in the evening. We're also looking at seeing whether they can issue fixed penalty notices as well for certain types of antisocial behaviour. But yeah, no, that's helpful feedback, and I'll have a chat with Ruth.
Thank you, James, because sometimes our gate is not always working.
Yes,
so people just...
another issue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janisha. Next, we've got, I want to complain about the fibre optic. This is the recent installation by Hyper Optic, I believe, because it has been interfering with the reception of the TV signal. There did seem to be a lot of things that went wrong around the time that they were installing the cables. The street lights in Verity went out, lots of phone lines went down. It may just be a freak coincidence, but there seems to be a number of issues at that same time.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's probably a mix of, and I emailed a resident about this just today. So the relationship that we have with Hyper Optic is to enable them to do the work. So we put in place what's called a way leave, which is council-wide, and we're the 4th state to get this super fast broadband, which, as we all now know, super fast broadband is definitely more than just a nice to have, I think, and you know, whatever happens, you know, once vaccines and what have you are established, I think we all see the benefit of that. So similar to existing telephony and broadband and satellite cable TV providers, all we do is give permission for those providers to come in and access the blocks. Now, in terms of digital TV, as in your communal area, we're directly responsible for that. So if someone's having a problem with that, raise a repair as you normally would. With regards to other services, it's really important that residents log that directly with their service provider, bluntly, the people they're actually paying to deliver the service, because they're responsible for making sure that there isn't any interruption in that regard. Now, I think what may have happened with Hyper Optic is everything, firstly I'll say everything they're running is new. It's a new network, new cables. They're not touching any existing cables. But at various points, for various reasons, there may be a need for them to go into intake cupboards to isolate power temporarily. And a lot of the intake cupboards, and for those who come into baseline, you can see them where your telephony, there's one just above the office I'm sitting in now, the telephony units are literally originals in some cases. So it doesn't take much of a knock or somebody opening the cupboard for something, you know, a bit of dust to get in or what have you, for things to fail. So we raised that with Hyper Optic, and they said, well, we don't touch anything, but we do go in and out of cupboards. And it might well be that, given the state of some of the intake services around telephony and maybe digital TV as well. It's not surprising. I remember at Moorland House, for example, the Virgin box on the corner, when I first started, didn't have a cover. So rain was just hammering in against the distribution board to everybody's broadband. So for anyone who had Virgin, it wouldn't surprise me if you're experiencing issues. So really important to go directly to your service provider. That's us. If it's your TV area, we just plug in to use Freeview. That's, you know, Sky, Virgin, whoever else it might be, if it's anything else. We've spoken to Hyperoptic and you know, made them aware of these concerns. But ultimately, people need to log it, because what service providers will do, a bit similar to the police really, the more inquiries they will get, they'll realise actually we need to do a little bit more. So the police will, you know, send someone on a beat or more beats, if you like, where they're getting reports of criminality. Similarly, these telephony and broadband providers, if they get a lot of repairs, rather than sending someone out to do, you know, one house at a time, they go, actually, we need to update, you know, the distribution boxes in this block or in this part of the estate. So I really would encourage people to keep going back to their service providers.
Thank you. Next, we've got a few questions around resident and non-resident leaseholders. So I'll do all of those in one block. So please can we have an update for resident and non-resident leaseholders? Next, we have what updates will leaseholders have to participate in? And when will the kitchens and bathrooms be offered to leaseholders? Will the internal boilers in flats be offered to leaseholders?
What was the last bit there, David? Sorry.
Will the internal boilers in flats be offered to leaseholders?
Okay. So the first one, the offer for leaseholders, we had a very long, but I think productive discussion with leaseholders, with central government. Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith, Deputy Leader, was there. Doug Goldring, Director of Housing Management, my boss, he was there as well. With leaseholders and shared owners, the subcommittee of the RA, who expressed really strong views. And I think that the term used was around, you know, why are we the only people who are faced with a bill for Grenfell? And that's not why any of us are here. Without going over all the arguments around why the council at this stage is in a position where it needs to charge what it is legally able to charge. At the moment, to cut to the chase of the question, for those leaseholders who are resident at the time of the tragedy and will be resident at the time that we'll be billing for works, there will be a 54% or 54.4% discount on those charges, a cap applied of £15,000 in line with what case law requires us to stop at anyway when grant funding comes into play. And for non-resident leaseholders, so buy-to-let landlords and so on, we wouldn't apply that discount at all. So strikes a more favourable balance for resident leaseholders and non-resident leaseholders. Ongoing discussions with government at ministerial level, in fact, in terms of what we can do, but without additional funding, we're not in a position where we're able to afford the kitchens and bathrooms that someone else seems to have asked for tenants, let alone leaseholders, based on the amount of funding we've got at the moment. Because we've only got, if we go back to the ideas days, we've got almost half of what's needed to deliver everything that's come out of the ideas days. The second question I wasn't quite clear on in terms of the updates, but I think I might understand that to be, as leaseholders, when will people be re-engaged again? So we'll obviously engage with all residents, including leaseholders, over the months ahead to finalise those designs. And then there would be a notice of intent and a notice of estimate specifically for the works that come out of those designs. So there will be those statutory consultations anyway in terms of the works. In terms of bills, as we're sitting here now, I can't see any bills landing until 2022, because we're only going to bill now if we get to, once the works are actually done, rather than before, or do the design elements first, and so on. Some of the grant bids we've submitted, though, some of the conditions of those are that we wouldn't bill leaseholders for the work. So there is a benefit there, not just in terms of increasing funding, but for leaseholders, we would actually be prohibited from charging for some of those works. Obviously, we shall see, and therefore it would be in everyone's interest if we were successful, but we shall see. In terms of the kitchens and bathrooms offer, so the offer would be that we would allow leaseholders to buy in at a cost price to our kitchens and bathrooms programme if they so wish. Lots of people really like the kitchens and bathrooms offer. Our refurbishment brochure, which will be seen by Moreland House residents and will probably show the block reps as well, has a range of about 6 to 12 different types of and colours of kitchen, for example, so far more than would normally be the case. And we've had leaseholders, we've even had private tenants and private owners ask us if they could have our kitchens and bathrooms installed. I think we'll probably be in a place to do that, not next year, the year after, just in terms of the amount of things that are going on. And I think it's right that we focus, given we have a legal responsibility and a contractual relationship with our tenants, I think it's right that we focus on delivering new kitchens and bathrooms for our tenants first. But then as soon as we're able to, I would really look forward to being able to offer a discounted, really modern kitchen and bathroom to leaseholders who wish to buy into it.
Thank you very much. Next question, what type of heating system are you going to be putting into Moreland House and water system? Because there is no water pressure in my bathroom, so no showers.
So just remember there was a fourth question I didn't answer there, David, wasn't it, on the first one, on the leaseholder one around internal boilers. So the lease states that where somebody's on a district heating system, so for everybody other than Treadgold, Camborne and Verity, as things stand, if we were to replace that with any other system, a district one, an individual system, whatever it might be, we would be able to recharge. Now, on the 3 covered walkways, we aren't recharging the plant, i.e. what is the gas boiler, because that was paid out under the insurance from the gas boiler that was lost as a result of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. Where we have individual boilers in the 3 blocks I mentioned, there's actually a leaseholder responsibility to maintain and replace that. However, if we were to, let's say, deliver on this renewable heat network, a suggestion that we're exploring, we wouldn't be able to, and therefore we wouldn't charge leaseholders for that. So there is a benefit potentially to leaseholders in terms of they wouldn't be charged should we look at a combination of air source heat pumps, whether it be gas CHP, ground source heat pumps, the sewer source heat pump we're exploring, solar, PV, all the rest of it, in giving up essentially the individual boiler, in that you couldn't be charged for that. And meanwhile, if you've got a gas boiler, it's your legal responsibility to check it every year and also to replace it when it's found to be at the end of life. Links into a bit to Moreland. So water pressure is a common issue we've had complaints about. We've installed electric showers where needed for people, and if someone's water pressure is really bad, just drop us an email or pop round and see if we can have a pump or give you an electric shower to keep things going until we deliver the overall solution. We've actually found where we have replaced the Harton units, which are the tanks, you have a cold tank and a hot tank, it's the fact that there is a tank which reduces the pressure. The actual mains pressure on Lake West is actually pretty good. When I first started, there were lots of people go, oh, yeah, the pressure's bad. It's not actually that bad at all. So often what we do is get rid of the cold tank and rely on the mains pressure, and that sorts your cold out. What we're doing in terms of the district heating systems, where we're doing the refurbishment at the moment, is installing unvented cylinders which create a pressure. They also mean if your district heating's down, you've got some resilience there individually in that you can heat up your own heating and hot water supply. So in terms of Moreland House, it's on a district heating system at the moment. We're undertaking that feasibility in terms of a heat network. We hope certainly by around January, February to have narrowed down 12 different options of a heat network down to probably around 3. I'm really keen that they're as green and as renewable as possible. We might end up with a hybrid where we keep some gas plants. So over by Camelford at the moment, I could envisage that we keep the gas plant there, get rid of the temporary boiler on the west side of the estate, and gradually move towards a much greener heat network. We're piloting various things as well in terms of a hydrogen fuel cell boiler, plasma radiators. So there's lots of stuff going on, which will all narrow us down to a point where we are able to deliver something really cutting edge and addresses those water pressure issues which you're experiencing. When the when the district heating systems were first installed, at the time, baths were the thing that people would have, and not showers. We're seeing obviously a total change of behaviour now, or it's been for many years, decades in fact, and we now need to deliver the heating and hot water system that meets those expectations, rather than trying to make a system that wasn't designed for the use of showers work, because we're able to do it here and there, but it's not something we can work with, and we will need to replace all the pipe work on both sides of the estate to make that happen.
Thank you. We've got 17 minutes left, and we've got 18 questions queued. Next one, are W11 planning on building suitable gates on the grass for residents with lock and key?
Great question. So we have, where we've had issues of people bring their dogs and dog fouling and all the rest of it, we have been bringing in new padlocks in a way where only residents who live there are able to make use of that space. So if somebody's got a particular space that's a concern, drop us a line and we will try to bring that in. And as I say, as part of the refurbishment, we'll be looking to address those sorts of issues wherever we can.
Thank you. Next one, there has been some great feedback from residents on the friendliness of the staff, I guess working in on the team there. Is there going to be options for more residents to gain work through W11?
I see that one's anonymous. Just to be clear, I didn't submit that comment, but thank you for the feedback. Yes, there is. So we are going to be launching a scheme, which is partly pandemic motivated, but also as part of our social value offer through the refurbishment. And it's going to be called Lanc West Works. What it is a rolling open opportunity for anyone who feels they have skills or talent or wants to develop those skills and sort of build on their interest, to submit their CV, very short cover letter about what they feel they can contribute to the estate, while either working with us or through our design teams or our contractors. And it would guarantee a 3-month work placement, London living wage. Obviously, it would need to be something which, as a team, we feel there is value in recruiting someone for. So it's not a guaranteed job per se. We're not at the scale to address that, but that's something we're really looking forward to launching by the end of the year. We'll also be recruiting a couple of apprentices, or at least one apprentice who is from a care leaver background in North Kensington, and they'll be starting with the team quite shortly. That was quite interesting and a really rewarding experience as well. And as you know, I think one of the best things we've done is recruit our local residents. We've got some phenomenal staff who live on the estate and or around the estate actually in wider North Kensington. And any opportunity, certainly in terms of as we scale up the refurbishment to recruit tradespeople, we would certainly seek to capitalise on that. And we really encourage applications as well from underrepresented groups, so particularly women in operative trades and people from various sort of community groups, so the Moroccan community, Somali community, and the Persian community in particular, are people would really appreciate more job offers or applications, sorry, from.
Thank you. Next one, the new fire alarm system is connected to several flats. Some go off during the night due to the connection to homes. Is this also connected to the team on site? I'm guessing this is for the walkways.
Yeah, so what we have got is, in terms of the new radio linked alarms that have gone into the walkways, we have got an app and notification. So a number of us get notified when they go off. We're installing a wall board as well in the office, so that it's not just reliant on phone, but anybody could see if there's a particular issue. We've got quite a degree of coverage. I think about 85% now of people who need to have them installed have had them installed. But yes, one of the benefits of working with ACO, a great company in terms of their products, is they're really cutting edge. And so it means, you know, when I'm at home in deepest South London, I would get a notification you know, if there was to be the situation that there was a fire where all the alarms are going off and people were likely to be leaving.
Thank you. And next one. What is the plan for the local lettings policy? Is it coming to an end? Will it be extended to residents who were not here during the fire? Can you coordinate local lettings policy with the decant system, given the extensiveness of works needed?
Yeah, lots in there. So the local lettings plan has been extended for just over 18 months from now. Where are we? Yeah, November. So to the end of July 2022 by the lead member, who has agreed we will review it at the end of 2021 to see whether we need to extend it by a further year, and we'll hopefully get to a stage where everybody we are able to house based on the types of properties we have here will be able to be housed. So certainly anyone who's in a 3-bed or below and who doesn't require flat level access or a minimum number of stairs, we're quite confident we have enough of the right size properties and accessible properties to house those. However, there are people who need larger properties, particularly 4 beds, or need flat level access, where currently, even if all of our properties were empty, there wouldn't necessarily be the stock available. So some of that we'll address through the refurbishment programme, but some of it, bluntly, would never be able to be addressed, that housing need, through the local lettings plan, just because of the types of buildings we have, until we start looking at lifts. Really looking to get lifts in for Clarendon, Camelford and Talbot, where it was one of the higher things in your top 10s, and there would be a lot of sense. Certainly Clarendon, you've got that wall in the middle, so that half the blocks can benefit from the ramp and all that other sorts of stuff. So there'll be a combination of things which hopefully mean we'll be able to move the vast majority of successful applicants to the local lettings plan. In terms of the refurbishment decant scheme, which was a more recent scheme we co-designed with the RA, we've moved 6 households through that already. We're about to do a bit of a communication for people who are eligible, where we're going to have quite quickly, because we've got a load of new contractors on board and as lockdown restrictions have eased, where the building trade earlier in the year totally seized up. I think we're in a place where we'll definitely be able to see a lot more people take advantage of that. You know, I certainly think in excess of 10% of households could well choose to leave their current home and move to one already refurbished in another part of the estate for various reasons, not least as it minimises the disruption. It's like moving into a new home, new start, and all the other benefits that brings.
Thank you very much. Next one, the windows in the walkways continue to be broke. During these next few months, with slot of possible rain, are there going to be measures put in place to prevent accidental injury?
So if someone's got a broken window, we will repair that now or make it safe as best as we can. And if we have to, we will replace that window. So I would ask that resident to drop us a line and we can send a surveyor around to address that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next question. I was wondering, will there be any scheme launched in the near future for people who are living in temporary accommodation after the Grenfell tragedy will be eligible to get lifetime secured tenancy on the estate?
Yeah, so again, that's quite a common question, and personally I think the temporary accommodation situation is a national scandal, and we try to do what we can on the estate in terms of the local lettings plan, including temporary accommodation residents in the scope. We've had a number of TA residents who've moved into lifetime secure tenancies. The fact that we brought lifetime secure tenancies in this borough at that time, we were the first estate to do that, and then the borough-wide policy was amended as a result. In terms of the quality of temporary accommodation management, there's a number of concerns around Notting Hill Genesis, and what we're doing as a council is gradually taking over direct management of temporary accommodation residents as well, which doesn't address the security of tenure issue, which this particular resident has raised, but certainly should hopefully improve the quality of repairs and other sorts of housing management related services that people ask for. The last thing I'll say is, in terms of Notting Hill Genesis, again, following very strong representation from TA residents, and from the Residents Association, the council agreed to buy back 11 Notting Hill Genesis properties, 3 of which are now secure tenants, and the other 8 remain in temporary accommodation, but will benefit from partial refurbishment in terms of kitchens and bathrooms to the same standard as our general needs stock. So we're not in a position at the moment to include temporary accommodation residents in the local lettings plan. That's explicitly not in scope, and we believe would be challengeable by a number of residents, not least people who may have been here at the time of the tragedy, who may then find themselves further down the waiting list, if you like, if we were to allow newer people with quite acute needs to move into secure tenancies. But I totally sympathise with the principle of the question and the motivation behind it, and we continue as a neighbourhood team to try and improve the quality of life and services for all of our residents, irrespective of whether you're permanent, temporary, or a resident leaseholder.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, referring back to the ASBO situation, if there is sufficient funding available, is it possible that the design of the stairwells in blocks can be looked at? This is where a lot of this happens.
Yes, absolutely. All sorts you can do, CCTV, lighting, door entry so people can't tailgate, gate in the estate. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next question. Are the proper steps and checks being taken to ensure people moving are only given the bed space they need and not want?
Absolutely. So for the local lettings plan, people only move to the bedroom size in line with that policy. And for the refurbishment decant scheme, people only move from an existing property to one of an identical bed size. So if that's a 2-bed, they move to a 2-bed. If that's a 3-bed, they move to a 3-bed. We are, of course, encouraging people to move out of properties where they have spare bedrooms to free up the larger properties. That's one of the things of the Bowmore Road development, which will become part of the estate. Hopefully by the end of the year, it will be finished and handed over to us, and we can start moving people in, which will be people from the wider borough, but also people from Lancaster as well. But absolutely, there will be no question of people gaining a bedroom by the refurbishment decant scheme.
Perfect, thank you. If anybody wants to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak to James. James, next we've got Maria. Oh, she did want to speak, and now she's disappeared.
Scared her off, David.
Yeah, here she is. Go ahead, Maria. Need to unmute Maria.
Okay. Can I be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. All right. In connection to what Nisha mentioned, it's true about this safe and the safe measures we're very concerned about here in Treadgold House because of the gate, right, for parking and all that. And I've noticed about days ago, there is always an individual who comes in at 3 a.m. with a scooter. And I doubt it very much if this person lives in the building. I've been observing it that usually it's at 3 in the morning. And of course, I live on the ground floor, and he's been looking all around our communal garden and maybe ways and means of, and of course, we have a bedroom just across, just right in front of the communal garden. And we have observed this person. So far lately, he hasn't come back. I assume he's that person. And he comes with a scooter. So I don't know. I thank God the gate is already been repaired as of yesterday. And hopefully until when it will be functioning, we don't know. But it's really a health, it's also health and safety measures that we're concerned about. And that's in continuation to what Nisha initially said. Now, I have another question about aerial communal box. I've already mentioned about this months ago to you, James, and I don't know, you said you were going to follow it up with the council or something, because it's you, the landlord, who's supposed to install one. There is one, yes, I installed already in the flat, but what I'm wondering is why my previous flat had 3 of them, one in each room and in the living room, whereas here in my new flat, it only has 1. And it's got to be a problem because we can't even get into this free view. That is, we're supposed to be paying 90p per week for that service, but we don't get it. So I don't know how. It's supposed to be the landlord, not us, to install it, because that one is left behind. If ever we move out, we don't bring that along with us. You understand, James?
Yeah, I do understand, Maria. And we've discussed this many times, you know. What we have got is so TGA are our mechanical and electrical consultants, designers, who will be looking at the digital TV offer. I think as part of that offer, we would absolutely be looking to install aerial points, if you like, into the lounge, and at the very least into a main bedroom, if not all the bedrooms. Based on your feedback, I've asked our team to review whether we can run the existing aerials, depending on how possible it is, into more than one room. So we're waiting to hear back from the design team as to if that's possible. It's not uncommon to move into properties and only have one aerial point, but ultimately I hear how important that is to you and potentially to other residents, and that's definitely something we're looking to do moving forwards.
Hope it will soon be settled, James.
Perfect. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, James. We have reached 8 o'clock. We still have quite a few questions. You're very popular, James. Are you okay to carry on for a little bit longer so we can get through as many as we can?
Absolutely.
Next, I'm going to bring Stuart back. Go ahead, Stuart.
Hey, James. James, where can we find out the decant system, the decant scheme? What's the eligibility? Like, what's the criteria?
Yeah, so the main criteria is that you were living here as a tenant at the time of the tragedy and you haven't had significant refurbishment work undertaken, and finally, you're not on the local lettings plan. So that'll talk about your individual circumstances. If you drop me an email, Stuart, I'll ask Kirsty, our lettings coordinator, to give you a call and talk through your options.
All right, cheers, James.
Thanks, Stuart. Next, I'm going to bring in Natasha. Go ahead, Natasha.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi. So I just wanted to know how many TA residents that were here at the time of the fire have been moved into a permanent property so far, and how many permanents have moved into another permanent?
Yeah, so roughly split, I can get exact figures, but off the top of my head, I think we've had 37 people move. I think around 7 of those are TA residents who were occupant at the time of the tragedy, and the rest are in some form of permanent accommodation, so they might be overcrowded and split down, or they've moved as a whole household to the larger one. So about 7 were PA, 30 were PA.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Natasha. Next question we've got is, I think it's related to Natasha's. How many people from TA have been rehoused in the new flats? How many were already permanent residents? I think that's the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Regarding to windows that we'll be putting in, will we be able to pick window colours?
Absolutely. So we held a Windows pilot engagement well, it's last year now, and we've since then piloted windows in Moorland House, Barrington House. We've still got the windows here next to me in Baseline, and we've installed the first triple glazed windows at Verity Close on the estate. The report will be formally published and presented at the January programme board, and then it will also include reference to it in our winter newsletter, which we're busy preparing at the moment. Interestingly, most people liked their existing window colours. It's certainly in terms of Moorland and Barrington, they like their existing window colours. Clarendon and Camelford, people like the idea of having like a contemporary sort of grey frame. So this will be powder coated aluminium. I've actually got some just behind me. I don't know if you can see. So behind me you can just see these weird looking things. They're actually samples of window frame. So powder coated aluminium, which can be in any colour that you like, really. And so what we will do is identify the configuration and the specification of the window, so whether it's double or triple glazed, the way it opens, and absolutely we will engage with residents in terms of the window colour. There are various different options, but in terms of do you have a grey or brown, for example, there is no cost difference whatsoever. So we would be more than happy to, subject to planning restrictions, which I need to add, because changing the colour of the window can create delays. But we're more than happy to work with residents. The one thing I would say is obviously we want some consistency of design. So, for example, we wouldn't have a situation where Chesterton had, I don't know, white windows, and then Barrington had, black windows, for example. But broadly speaking, we absolutely want residents to help us to choose the colours. And we've had some success at doing that on a smaller level in terms of the Chesterton 400s entrance garden that has gone in very recently. There we asked residents to vote on the colours, and I won't embarrass the resident, I think she's probably on the call, who had her a name picked from the hat, if you like, in terms of coming up with the colour which best represented the different views.
Thank you. Next question: how much money is allocated to each flat in Moorland House?
So currently the funding we have, the 57.9 million, allows us to spend £72,000 per property. Now, when I say spend on the property, that's not just in works, that's in terms of the team we need here, in terms of engagement, in terms of the design team, in terms of the surveys and so on. So in terms of works, actual physical works, that brings us down to probably about £60,000 per unit. Now that assumes that we would invest the same into a leasehold property as to a tenant's property, which of course we wouldn't, because kitchens and bathrooms are not our responsibility. So there is a little bit of an uplift there from a tenant's point of view. But at the moment, the cost of our internal refurbishment is about £43,000 to £44,000. So that doesn't leave that much, probably another £20,000 to spend on everything else: heating, hot water, windows, roof insulation, wall insulation, CCTV, door entry, all that sort of thing. Hence why we're looking actively at additional funding sources, but that just a broad breakdown, and that's exactly the same as we've got for every other property on the estate.
Lovely, thank you for that. Next, are we forever looking at ways to increase the size of the estate? I think it's a good thing because it helps us all.
Yeah, so the Bowmore Road development is just being finished up. The allocations is underway. That's 32 new homes, which, as far as many residents are concerned, are on the estate, and it's for that reason that we will be managing those homes, and that will be a mixture of new residents to the estate, existing residents to the estate. We're also looking at creating a Lancaster West neighbourhood master plan, part of which will look for opportunities to build new homes. So underneath the covered walkways, there's an option potentially in terms of baseline. There's various other sites as well we could potentially look at to create new homes and certainly grow the estate, but in a way, to be clear, it delivers social rented homes for the benefit of people who need it in the borough. So not building and developing and regenerating and all the sort of stuff that goes on elsewhere, but stuff that meets housing need on the estate and the wider borough, and it is done in a way where residents are happy for it to be done. We will not do any building or top hatting, putting new homes on top of blocks that residents are not happy with.
Thank you. Next question. What is the possibility of having internal wall down to, for instance, to merge a bathroom and a toilet or to enlarge a kitchen. Also, if a bathroom was changed 4 years ago by weights in the last bathroom and kitchen upgrades, but I'm unhappy with the size of the bath as I had no choice in the matter, would I be allowed to have it changed to a smaller one?
So, yeah, two very good questions there, and we're putting together a really in-depth FAQ document which will answer some of this. So the first bit about structural changes. So if the structural change is technically feasible from a health and safety point of view and is minimal additional cost. So the example you gave there of the WC in the bathroom becoming one is an example of that. 9 times out of 10, that's no problem whatsoever. Where you've got load-bearing walls or you're ending up reconfiguring entire large bits of the flat, we might need to draw the line. We're looking at ways to be able to offer a choice between, say, an open plan kitchen approach, so to our large properties in your Talbot Walks, Clarendon and Camelford type configurations, or as opposed to a separate kitchen. So where we can do that within the budget envelope and it's technically possible and doesn't cause any safety issues, absolutely. In terms of some of the massive reconfiguration that was talked about in the ideas days, that won't be possible. In terms of the person who had their bathroom installed by weight pre-Grenfell tragedy, absolutely, you would have the opportunity if you just wanted a larger bath and we can deliver one, is the big issue, then we will absolutely find a way to give you that.
Lovely, thank you for that, James. Next up, we're almost towards the end. I live on the top floor in the walkways and my water pressure is bad. I cannot fill a bath. Will the water pressure in the walkways and other blocks be looked at? You touched on the water pressure earlier.
Yeah, so the cold mains water pressure is fine. It's the Harton units which are the problem. And so in the internal refurb, we're putting in the unvented cylinders which generate that pressure locally in the flat. So before we even look at what's the district system doing, there's a balance there because you don't want to turn the pressure up on old pipes because you'll end up with leaks all over the place. And that's basically what's happening on the east side. It certainly happened last Christmas, as probably many of the residents with us tonight will know. We had a lot of outages because leaks were being sprung in terms of the pipe work. But yeah, absolutely, we'd be looking to significantly improve the water pressure as part of refurbishment.
And regarding boilers, the water heater that was 30 years old, will that be replaced as a leaseholder, and at what cost?
So if it's on the district heating system, yes, that would be replaced. That would be a rechargeable event, and depending on when you were here and or when you bought property, do you live here? Will you be living here at the time of the charge? And the stuff I touched on earlier will depend on whether you're charged. If it's an individual boiler or heater, then it would be up to the leaseholder to replace. However, as part of the heat network feasibility we're looking to generate, if we were to say connect up Treadgold, Verity and Camborne to that, then we wouldn't be recharging for those works.
Next, regarding antisocial behaviour, why are the perpetrators, if known, not being evicted?
So I mean, fortunately, a minority of the perpetrators of the ASB that is certainly being talked about in the community live on the estate. There have been probably 2 or 3 that are, and either tenancy enforcement action has taken place. We are in the process of evicting a couple of households purely for antisocial behaviour, and obviously the police have arrested, in some cases detained, charged a couple of people who live on the estate, but the vast majority don't, which is a good thing in a way. It doesn't make it any nicer if you're experiencing it, but I'm glad to say that very few households are actually committing ASB who live on the estate. It's people coming in from the outside, and in some cases taking advantage of younger people who do live on the estate. And obviously we try to get a balance of support and nurturing for our younger residents, but at the same time drawing a very clear line that we won't accept ASB or criminality.
Thank you. And last question, if anybody does want to get any last questions in, please feel free to type your question in the Q&A box or raise your hand and I can bring you in to speak to James. Last one for the moment is, when will works begin in Upper Talbot Walk? Have we got a plan for that yet?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the Talbot Walk as a whole, we're at the moment programming so that the major works and so the block works would commence probably about 9-10 months from now. In terms of the internal refurbishment, Talbot Walk is a smaller block. It is also one that's had quite a bit of internal refurbishment as well. So it could potentially be one we do the internal refurbishment of sooner rather than later. So it is being talked about internally, subject to surveys, as one of the blocks that we'll be looking to come to next, because we've got very few properties that haven't had some refurbishment works already.
Thank you very much. So that was the last question. That was quite the marathon. Thank you very much for your time, James.
Thank you.
We all appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined this evening. I hope everybody found it helpful and got a lot out of it. We will look to do more of these in the future. As Abba said at the beginning, we will look to do our general meetings through this method if residents find it useful. And we'll continue to have more meetings with James as well. We will be providing a recording of this online, so if you want to go back, or if you know anybody that wasn't able to make it tonight, they will also be able to view that. So thank you very much again, James, for your time, and thank you everybody else. All have a good evening. Thank you for joining.
Thanks all. Good night.